Hello everyone, I'm Donal Laverty. I'm the consulting partner at Baker Tilly Mooney, a member of Baker Tilly International, and we're very pleased to be part of the CO3 Stepping Up Virtual Conference 2021. Today we're doing a short workshop. Thank you for joining us. The theme of today's workshop is responding, resetting and reinventing, looking beyond hybrid working and managing transformation in a changed world. And I think we all recognize that the narrative developing over the past year has focused on the so-called death of the office. But I think that while some people have undoubtedly thrived upon working from home, others have struggled. And similarly, while productivity had gained across some organizations, many of those gains had come at the expense of employees' work-life balance, as the working day has expanded and has been unconstrained perhaps by commuting life or by social life. So for many, the change in the pace of life, some of our most fundamental behaviours have changed. And this has given rise to new trends, which are both accelerating but also reshaping the future of our work. So many people have missed those daily interactions that we have with people, those conversations that spark creativity and the well-being boost of socializing with colleagues, clients and customers. So today's theme, which is a short workshop, and we will follow it up with a second one later in the autumn, is exploring the rise of hybrid working, but examining a number of key themes that are coming out of that around the new workforce strategy, the new type of leadership that's going to require, and emerging organizational culture. And I think that what we have to imagine is the curation of experience and culture becoming a container for work, and that the space that work can provide and how it can design and enhance both. And I think that what that means that in this shifted context, that we need a new and a brave, authentic leadership to build workplaces and practices that ultimately are going to meet our new requirements. I think there's no doubt that COVID-19 has accelerated the shift to hybrid working models, and that has required a fundamental shift then in the change in the skills and the team leaders have, for example. And hybrid working has clearly represented possibly the greatest shift in work practices since probably the dawn of the internet, for those of us who can remember working pre-internet days. And that trend of spending part of your week at home, part of it in the office, has been described by writers as the great disruption. But I think that only reflects part of the story, in that more and more research is unveiling an underlying mental shift that involves organizations trying to keep pace with and keep up with who's working where and what they're doing. So hybrid working is a little bit like an iceberg. It's an iceberg that's been cast adrift. It's currently floating on the sea of uncertainty. And many organizations are really trying to work out what it looks like. And on the surface of that iceberg are many slippery questions around balancing the needs of employers and the leaders. And below that, and out of sight, lie perhaps more fundamental questions around traditional working practices. But I think what's influencing the shifting mindset and the direction of travel that businesses are moving in, perhaps more permanently in this hybrid model, is that balance. And that's the fundamental word that we're using here, the balance, in fact, in that employer and employee wishes have to be balanced and tempered by each individual needs. So that rebalancing of the equation is a major factor. And I think leaders' roles are changing in terms of realignment of people's expectations. And Jennifer Logue, who's an American writer, she refers to leaders creating a place of psychological safety. So leaders can offer that safety by both the stability that comes from decisiveness and the empathy that comes from flexibility. So hybrid working will evolve and will continue to evolve, but employees who need the support that they require to thrive in that business will require that psychological safety that comes from good leadership. And there's no question about it that the mindset sitting beneath hybrid working is complex. How it's going to work in practice, how are we going to reset the future of work? There's a talk now about managers having less authority due to much more casualization or less formal structures in work. So how is this all going to work? And I suppose what is emerging is that there's a line of thought that the future of leadership is multimodal, as they talk about. So effectively, you have a new type of leadership emerging, where in this new hybrid world that requires a different skill set that goes beyond traditional leadership skills and traditional team skills. So specifically, organizations are going to need leaders who can operate well across two distinct modes. For much of the time, they're going to operate in a virtual coordination mode, and that means establishing goals, monitoring progress, driving information sharing, sustaining connections with colleagues remotely. When their teams periodically then come together to engage in true collaboration, those leaders then need to operate a face-to-face collaboration mode, which is all about learning and innovation and acculturation and dedication. So, that nature and mix of team tasks will very much dictate the mode in which those teams operate. Tasks that involve dependability, but without much integration. Reporting, administrative tasks, simple decision-making, sharing information, those will all be done virtually. And likewise, research and experience shows that most one-on-one interaction between leaders and the reports is becoming more and more virtual. However, essential tasks that require team members to integrate their knowledge, to create safe spaces for dialogue on different issues or difficult issues, it's all about the emotional connection that can't be done effectively working remotely. So in order for teams to achieve a breakthrough in innovation or solve complex, that means that that can be done much more effectively in person. So there are limitations to the technology piece, and increasingly that duality of leadership is going to become increasingly important. So I think that broadens the whole narrative around the expectations of leadership and leaders going forward, insofar as that the employer role, not just the leader role, will probably shift somewhat, and I think we've seen it already, into more about managing the life experience of the employee, because the pandemic has allowed organizations much more access and much more visibility into the personal lives of employees, because we have all faced unprecedented professional and personal challenges in the last year. And it's becoming increasingly apparent that those organizations that are concerned with, who put in support mechanisms around the personal well-being of employees, actually see an exponential increase in the productivity and the support that the employee is giving back. And that's why 2021 will be a year where mental health in its broadest sense becomes more important, where financial health becomes important as well, and where things that, talking about finance, talking about health, mental health, which were perhaps seen as out of bounds previously, a bit like sleep, they will come to the table and they become benefits that people were going to talk about openly. So effectively, what's happening is that change is happening. Clearly, change is happening. Where and when people work, what spaces you provide people to work in, and what technology you are also using. And the number one challenge for leadership just now is, how do you lead with certainty when there's so little of it? It's a difficult question, and I guess there's no straightforward answer to it. But I think there are three broad emerging things for leaders to hold on to and to reflect upon. I think the first one is that it's all about awareness, not reaction. It's about being aware of your own organization and not reacting to what's necessarily going on around you. It's about understanding how your organization will perform or react, or what is suitable to it. So it's not a question of following the sheep. It's about having an awareness of how your own people and organizations will react to certain situations. So it's taking that time to be reflective. It's also about, secondly, I think, continuing that first point, looking inwards rather than outwards. I think the pandemic has taught us that we should be reflecting on what has worked well during the pandemic, what has held our organizations together, what were the high points and what were the low points, and to really build upon the lessons learned. So looking inwards gives us the building blocks for the future piece, and to discard the pieces that didn't work, because I think we've all realized that there's an awful lot of what went pre-March 2020 is irrelevant to what goes forward. And I think finally, there's a third point around leadership at the moment, and it's about creating belonging, not buildings. So how do you create that sense of belonging? And the only way I can do it in my own mind is that a family is not defined by the house that it lives in. A family is often scattered across many towns, countries, continents even, but yet they are held together by a common bond. So how do you as a leader pull upon those multiple threads? How do you find that common bond? How do you keep that and those people all pulling in the one direction? I think to conclude this short session today, I'd say that the pandemic has clearly changed people's expectations. It has forced many people to reprioritize what they want, not just in life, but in their career or from their employer. And organizations must look and step up to every opportunity to deliver on those expectations, in order both to keep the people motivated and productive, but equally to attract and retain the best possible talent going forward. So I think for me, the lessons of the future, and as we go into a new normal, yes, the future of team leadership is about being multimodal. It is about creating those safe psychological spaces. It is about looking beyond hybrid into a new type of work. But ultimately, the challenge is about building new organizational cultures, and that's happening beyond the walls of a building. And I think that's the number one challenge. So thank you for listening today. We will be doing a second session later in the autumn, so please do register any interest that you might have for that. But I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference, and thank you so much for your attention today. Thank you.